Hello and welcome everyone. Today we will take a look at 5 different positions where the rooks kind of go wild and just do what they want. So let's look at the first position here. Take a look at this. It is black to move. And as we take a look, white is ahead here. They both have pair of rooks, but white has these 2 extra pawns and is getting ready to just try and push these pawns forward and promote at least one of them. So what is black to do here? How can you turn this position around with black? So take a look at any time. If you need to pause the video to think about it longer, go ahead. If not, let's see what happens here. All right, so turn on the analysis, and here it is showing that white is winning. So black needs to act immediately here. So in the game, rook to f3 was played. So now we see the computer didn't even find this, I guess. So we have a fork now with the rook attacking the king and white's rook here. So, and it's a check. So what does white do? Give up a rook? Obviously not. So after capture, now white is ahead a whole rook. But these rooks, black's rooks just continue. The other rook switches over now, making a crazy attack on the king. So rook to b5, checking the king, and the king just tries to run away. So up to e6 to help promote his passed pawn. But then we have rook to e5 with check. So next, the king just continues to move, and the black rook just chases that king all over the board. So it just continues, and now we have another offer to give up the rook. Either the king can capture, the pawn can capture, or the rook can capture. So pretty wild. 3 different pieces could capture this rook, but this is possible because if you look at the black king, he's in a stalemated position. So all 3 of these captures would lead to a stalemate. So white tries to avoid that by moving, but the rook just keeps checking the king. And after this position, the game was it just ended in a draw. Because that rook would just keep chasing the king. If the king tried to run down here to h6, for example, well then we just have rook to h7, forcing the issue because now the king is in check and can't go anywhere, and he would have to capture, and then it would be a draw. All right, let's move on to the next position of these rooks going wild here. All right, let's see, position number 2. All right, so here once again we have black to move. I'll switch the board around. Sorry I didn't do that in the last one. So black to move here. So once again, what do you think black should do? If we look at the position, black is kind of in trouble here. The king is trapped down here. His pawns are blocked. White has this passed pawn here, which is protected for the moment, but his king is more active. So take a look. What do you think black should do? And if at any time you need more time to think, just pause the video. If not, let's take a look. All right. So with the analysis, the evaluation shows that here black is in trouble. So black must do something immediately. It's plus almost 2.5 in white's favor. And so the game continued with rook capturing here. just taking out the pawn, letting the other rook capture him. So now, white is ahead here. Down a whole rook. What does black do? So if we go back one, the computer said that rook takes b7 was the best move, and that white is still ahead. But now we have rook to f8 check, and the king starts running. Rook to e8 check. The king runs, and now it's showing that the game is even. So if we go back and see if there was anything that could have been done, it looks like no. Once this rook is captured here, the game is pretty much even, because the king will just be checked by this rook just chasing that king around. And then he jumps up here, just harassing this king the whole time, and it will just go on. And once again, if we take a look, the king is in a stalemated position here. So if, for example, the rook is captured, well, now it's a stalemate because the pawn is cutting off the king from moving back, and the rook is protecting the pawn and cutting off any forward movement. All right, well, let's take a look at the third example here. All right, let's see. Number 3. Okay, so once more, it is black's turn to move, so I'll flip the board around to black's perspective. What would you do here? Take a look, see if you can figure it out. If we look at this, white is ahead a pawn and has a passed pawn here, ready to travel down the board and try and promote. Also, this rook is blocking the king from moving, as well as this rook and the pawns. So once again, we see that black has his king in a stalemated position if it weren't for the two rooks here. All right, let's see what happened. Let's see. So the evaluation says the game is even here. But there is one move that works to hold the draw, and that's rook to b3. So after rook to b3 check, we have king to a2, and now the rook drops back, threatening a mate with rook to a8 here, mating the white king. So rook to a6 must be played to block that threat. And now we have rook to c2 check. The king moves up, and black captures a pawn here. So now the continuation is white repositioning his rook back here, ready to capture a pawn and check the black king, possibly. So rook to a7 check. The king moves. Rook checks again. And after the king moves, we have rook to a7. So now the rook jumps up here and sacrifices itself. So capture, but then this rook jumps over here and begins to just harass the king. And so the game ended in a draw here because, what can white do? He just starts moving his king down the board, but this rook, for example, the rook will just chase the king all the way across the board until he just runs in to his own rook here. So, as an example, this is how the game could have continued. Now what does he do? He has to move back. And the king here is in a stalemated position. So if he captures, then it's just a stalemate. All right, let's take a look at the fourth example. All right, number 4. Once again, it is black's turn to move, but I won't flip the board. Let's see here. So black's turn to move. what would you do in this position if you haven't already seen the moves up there? All right. So let's see. Black's turn to move. Take a look. What would you do as black? Now, hopefully you figured out that there's a threat of mate in 1 here with rook to h8. So if we look at the analysis here, analysis, evaluation, lines, it looks like, oh, come on. Sorry about that. I'm having problems here. Okay. Back to the original position. Rook to h8 is threatened with mate. All right, so in the game, g5 was played, which allows the king to escape. But now if we look at the position, black has all these pawns, so 5 pawns to white's 1. So, white must do something here to avoid losing. In the game, we had rook checking. The king moves to the only square possible, and then a check over here. But this gives up the rook. So capture, and then the game continued with the other rook sacrificing itself. But black refuses to capture. But now the rook just starts chasing this king across the board. And so after this position, the game was just agreed as a draw. But, how could it have continued? Well, possibly the rook could start, the king could continue running. But now we have rook here. And then, if he goes up here, the rook could just keep attacking. And it would just continue all over the board. So you get the picture. And the reason this is possible, once again, is because the white king is in a stalemated position. This rook is blocking off the g1 square, and the 2 rooks are also covering h2 here. And the rook here is protected by his fellow rook. All right, one more example of these rooks just going crazy. So let's take a look here. The final example, number 5. And this time it's white's turn to move. So what should white do here? Take a look at this. The material is even. But, the pawns are even, but white is behind here a whole rook. So white is in trouble. How can he salvage a draw out of this position? And in this game, I believe Frank Marshall, played this position with white. So he was behind, but he pulls off a little bit of magic with a wild rook here. So the game is even, and this is why. So the computer gives rook captures or rook to f5, but in the game we had rook to h6 here. Just blocking this rook. So, the opponent said, sure, I'll take that rook if you're going to give it to me. But then we had a promotion of the pawn, forcing a capture here. And then after b5, the white king is in a stalemated position. And the game was agreed a draw here. So take a look at this. What could black do in this position? If he doesn't agree to the draw, whatever he moves, white is trapped because this pawn is blocking the king from moving back. The king is cutting him off from going forward. So the only option to try and prevent the stalemate would be something like this. But this allows a capture here. So Now the position is still in a stalemated position. Well, excuse me. It would be in a stalemated position if this pawn couldn't move. So, what can be done here? If the rook moves away, this pawn could promote and checkmate black. So the rook is forced to guard this pawn. If the rook jumps in front of the pawn, well, white is once again stalemated. So, maybe he could just push his pawn, but then we would have the pawn promoting and forcing the rook capture, and it would be a stalemate. So if this were played, well, then white would end up winning, which is even crazier, given how far behind he was. So after capture, well, then what? The threat is for these pawns to push forward. The computer gives the best move as moving the king up here to stop this pawn from pushing forward. But then you have king capturing, renewing this threat. If the rook tries to move down here to pin this pawn, well, then the other pawn can move forward, promoting and winning the game. So, a pretty crazy position. The computer recommends, well, there's also stalemates involved here as well, but computer recommends retreating the king back, but then this allows c7, and then the rook checks here, but there's still a mate, although it takes a while. So the king would be chased across the board with something like this. King moves. Now what? Rook to h6, king to e7. Then we have this. So capture, and now what? If rook to c6, as the computer recommends, well, then we could have something like this. c8 promoting, forcing the rook to capture, but then recapture and promote to queen. So white would be winning. You get the idea. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed these 5 examples of some wild rook maneuvering and sacrifices. So sometimes if the game seems lost, take a second look. There may be a way to create a stalemate position and sacrifice your remaining pieces to leave your king stalemated and hold a draw. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video featuring chess endgame tactics, which it's a good way to study your endgames and to see some different tactics at work in the endgame. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave comments, suggestions, or even requests for videos you would like to see. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.